Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll be giving everyone a couple of minutes to get in and settled.
Good afternoon.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to give as many people as we can an opportunity to join. We will kick things off quite quickly. I think I'll give it one more minute after 12, as we only have half an hour and we don't want to take up any more time.
Hello.
How's it? Welcome.
Hello.
Hi, guys. All right, we're doing well. We've got about 22 people in so far out of an expected 40 odd. I'm not going to wait for everyone, as is usually the case with a room full of IT professionals. There's always an opportunity that something's on fire somewhere. But still a great turnout, so I'm going to give you guys just another minute or give everyone another minute to join. If your Uber has arrived, if your Uber Eats has arrived, make sure your camera's off while you tuck into the burger and chips, or God help us all, ribs or a crab pasta. No one wants to see that. All right, we're 1 minute past 12, guys. We're up to almost 30 people. We'll have other people coming in drips and drabs as we go. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Another Turrito event, another Bytes and Bytes or Lunch and Learn. Really appreciate all of you taking some time out of busy schedules. As I said earlier, I'm very happy to see so many people attending these events. But of course, as is always the case, we do lose some people to the inevitable fire that might be burning in your environments. So I'd like to welcome everyone here, but Dan and Adam specifically from Redstor. They're going to be presenting for us today. Dan is going to kick off a little bit of a slideshow presentation, but as you guys know, if you've attended one of our events before, this is not death by PowerPoint. We like to keep things short and sharp, which we will be doing. Dan will take you through some things. Adam's then going to jump on and do a little bit of a demo so you can actually see the product at work. So what we're talking about today, protecting Entra ID with Redstor Advanced Backup. And I am increasingly of the opinion over the last 6 months, and Dan's going to frighten us all. I'm sure all of you guys don't need any more frightening because you're IT professionals. The goal here for us, though, and for me in general as Turrito, is we want to give you guys as much content as possible to take an argument to Exco. You need to be in Exco, speaking to the executives in an organization, speaking to the board, and trying to make them understand the risks that the company faces. So once again, that's what this is about: is we bring the right people to the table to furnish you guys with the right talking points to be able to create budget for these things. And that's really one of the purposes. So we're going to talk a little bit about the threats, and as I sort of alluded to earlier, what I'm realizing, and especially in the last 6 months, increasingly backup is everything. We know that events are happening. We know breaches are occurring. From our side, we're plugged into IT departments across the country and across Southern South Africa, Southern Africa. We're seeing at least constant turned away events, constant turned away breaches based on the security that our customers have. But right now, on a weekly basis, we have customers dealing with an active breach. So this is like homeowners' contents insurance. This is close to my heart right now because we've had a break-in at our office recently. To me, backup is like insurance. You know they're going to get in. How quickly can you get your stuff back? And increasingly, the backup tools need to be better. They need to be faster. When you're responding to an event, you've got to be able to position someone with get that user back online as quickly as possible with their data while we handle risk mitigation, investigations, the ensuing root cause analysis, RCAs, et cetera, et cetera. With the right products, that becomes exceptionally easier to do. With a smaller team, you're supporting your smaller team with the right products. And for me, that's exactly what this is. It's what we specialize in Turrito. We want to bring the right products to you guys as IT departments. Okay, that being said, I won't take up any more time. Dan, let me hand over to you.
Cool. Thank you very much, Aaron. Really, really appreciate it. And appreciate everyone carving out half an hour over lunch. Very, very grateful. So quick intro from me. So I'm Dan Boddington, product manager here at Redstor for our cloud and SaaS products. And we're also joined by the wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Dan. It's Adam Cronin here. Technical genius, not sure, but senior sales engineer at Redstor. So pleased to meet you all.
Cool. Thanks, Adam. So really quick one. So today, as Aaron mentioned, we're going to be talking a little bit about Entra ID. Again, there's not too many slides, hopefully, and we're going to get into the meat of the demo that Adam is going to show us what we're doing. But I thought I'd just spend a couple of minutes first laying out how we see Entra ID, the problems that we can see happening right now and also on the horizon, and how we can help out and what we can do just to help mitigate against some of these. So the first question I'm asked quite often is, what is Entra ID? And put it simply, it's Microsoft's identity and access management solution. So it's a lot of words to say this screen. So 99% of people, if you're not dealing with Entra ID or Entra ID, as some people do like to call it, you'll sort of recognize it as this single screen that you may see once a week, once a day, once a month, depending on how you're set up. And really, it's responsible for making sure that if you're trying to access emails, Teams chats, or all the other things that it's governing and it's responsible for, that the person accessing it is who they say they are. And we typically do that through a username, password, and maybe a multi-factor authentication on a mobile phone or something. And then once it's managed to identify who you are, it then goes and checks to make sure that you've got the right authorizations to access that data. So are you trying to access your own mailbox, or maybe perhaps somebody else's mailbox, or trying to access a SharePoint document that actually you don't have the authorization to go and access? So it's a massive thing under the hood, but to 99% of people, it looks like this, and then they access their emails, and that's where the meat of their work is done every day. But actually, if you scrape away this top layer, it's a very large product tool from Microsoft that has lots and lots of functionality. I'm not going to cover it all. I'm sure lots of people know this anyway, so forgive me if this is all a part of your day-to-day. But yeah, it's a very large piece of core infrastructure that's running pretty much every business today. So things that it's responsible for are your users and what access they have to the Microsoft services, so accessing PowerPoint documents like this one, Excel spreadsheets, SharePoint or files in SharePoint, OneDrive, and so on. But also, in the sort of top right-hand corner icon here is also the non-Microsoft applications as well. And sometimes I think a lot of people forget this. So if you've got SSO set up, single sign-on, and you're using Entra ID as your user identity and access management tool, it's going to govern who people or what people are accessing in things like maybe Salesforce, if you're using that as a CRM, or Slack, or we're big users of Miro, but also not just the Microsoft tools, but also the non-Microsoft tools as well. And there's quite a scary stat when you start adding up how many tools in a typical sort of small to medium business that are used on a day-to-day basis. They're actually then leveraging Entra ID for their login and authentication. Other things Entra ID is responsible for is sort of things like devices. So if you're using Intune, and again, that's almost like a whole product in its own right inside of Entra ID. So that's governing things like patching, device management, asset management, things like that. It's also perhaps maybe it's governing your on-premise applications. So if you're running any on-prem servers, you can set up Entra ID to govern the access and authorization of people accessing those on-premise applications. More fundamentally as well, for doing business, just like we are today, we've got multiple people from multiple companies. Microsoft Entra ID is working in overdrive for this very Teams call, and it's federating and allowing access for different organizations to join meetings. And again, it's almost 2 Entra IDs working together, perhaps maybe, or multiple Entra IDs working together today, in fact, to allow myself and Adam from Redstor to join a Teams call, to join Turrito's Teams call, and for all of us to join this call as well. So there's lots of stuff going on under the hood there to make sure that the people who are accessing this call have been invited, perhaps if it's locked or it's got some special permissions. And then that scales not just to Teams, but to things like SharePoint files. So if you are working, collaborating with an external business partner, for example, you may share a SharePoint file. You want to make sure that only that business partner can access that file and nobody else can outside of that chain of governance. So these are just sort of the sort of big picture, or some of the items that live within Entra ID, but you can see it's a very, very vast piece of technology. And I think what's changed really rapidly over the last couple of years is that Microsoft Entra ID used to be known as Azure Active Directory, and that had a nice rebrand from Microsoft maybe about 18 months, 2 years ago. And before that, it was on-prem Active Directory, and you had it set up in its domain controllers throughout your business, perhaps maybe even in some server rooms or in data centers. And it kind of naturally had its own backup and protection because you had a couple of copies of it dotted around. If one of those failed, if an internet link was broken in a data center, if there was a power outage or the UPS failed, for example, it was kind of okay because you had a domain controller elsewhere. But what's really changed rapidly is because this is all Microsoft Entra ID is entirely cloud-based, and we're centralizing all of this functionality in one single location, which is brilliant because it brings so many benefits to us that you can see here, and can really allow us to secure our businesses in general when it comes to sort of data and data governance and user access and authentication. Is that you sort of ended up with a single point of failure. In essence, and I know there's lots of tools under the hood of Microsoft Entra ID, and the team at Microsoft have done a fantastic job to make this robust and resilient, but there are some challenges and pitfalls that we find on a day-to-day basis with our customers. So that's hopefully sort of quick overview how we sort of see Entra ID. What we're seeing from a threat point of view is a couple of really, really key trends, and sort of the team at Microsoft helped us as we've been building out our Entra ID product over the last 12 months or so, is sort of identifying some of those key parts of the threat landscape. And I think there are four buckets that we put some of these really key threats into, that are really targeted and focused on Entra ID. So the first one is speed, and this has changed really drastically over the last sort of 18 months or so. So from sort of initial targets of initial breach to accessing internal data, the speed at which this is happening now has just accelerated and exploded. So it's gone from maybe being a couple of hours or even days in some instances, maybe sort of 5 years ago or so now, but the average time for a malicious third party to access data within your organization is now down to a little over an hour. So I think we're going to spend half an hour on a call today discussing Entra ID. That leaves us with 42 minutes left to go and react to that. And that is the speed at which these malicious attacks, especially focused on Entra ID, are changing. The sort of second bucket that we're seeing lots of, I'm sort of confirming this with the teams at Microsoft as well, not just for our customers and how we're seeing it, but also globally across Entra ID, is that password attacks have exploded as well. So in the past, where perhaps maybe they were quite targeted with password attacks, we're seeing now globally upwards of 7,000 password attacks every second, and that's doubled really in the last 12 to 18 months. And that can be from a range of different ways. So typically malicious attackers will try passwords, and if you're using a weaker password or you're reusing passwords, they'll leverage those. But also they're getting a little bit more sophisticated with their password attacks. So if you've got, I've got a personal email account that's got Dan Boddington somewhere in that personal email account, they're then seeing my email address looks like this and my name. They're then working out who I am, perhaps maybe on LinkedIn or some social media tool, working out who I work for, and then trying to use, maybe I've had a password leak from my personal email, then trying to use whatever that password was I've been using my personal email to access some of my corporate identities as well. And so they've been quite sophisticated in the way they're using some of this data that's readily available across the internet. So we're seeing a massive explosion in password attacks, and that is a range of testing attacks, but also things like token replay attacks as well. So when you've logged in, caching a token that you're using under the hood to access data like Teams clients, your Exchange data, etc., and your third-party tools to then actually circumvent some of these authentication protocols as well. So the scale is just so rapidly changed. The third one, I touched on it a little bit there, is the sophistication of attacks. So I was with Microsoft last week, and they were talking about how they monitor some of the top criminal entities around the world, and they start watching what they're doing so they can react really quickly to how they're behaving and how they're accessing data for customers. The number, this is just the raw number of entities that they've been monitoring, that are sort of their top priority entities of monitoring, have increased 5 times over the last 12 months. So they were monitoring about 300 organizations or 300 entities dotted around the world, and now measuring or monitoring well over 1,500 of those. So these are just the top priority ones. There's lots of sort of lower level, lower priority ones, but the ones that they're pouring money and time and effort in to monitor has just increased massively as well. So the sophistication of these criminal entities is rapidly increasing as well. And finally, and probably the most concerning for everybody here, is the attack surface. So believe it or not, and I couldn't believe it when I saw this stat, is there are 500 million daily active users now using Entra ID. So that's 500 million people are using Entra ID each and every day. And the typical SME is accessing 150 apps. So if you think about that SSO that I was talking about earlier, you've got an attack surface of 550 million people who are susceptible to password attacks and token replay attacks. And then if something does go wrong or somebody manages to gain access, they then have access to well over 150 apps in a typical small to medium enterprise. And that is the sort of attack surface we're talking about here. So I appreciate there's a lot of sort of fear, doom and gloom, but this is the sort of threat landscape we're seeing has changed really rapidly over the last sort of 12 or 18 months or so. Aaron mentioned it earlier, and I am a big advocate for this, even though I work in backup and we're very much on the cure side of it. But prevention is always going to be better than cure. That is, we know that. So a range of life, whether it's cybersecurity or health or anything else, we know prevention is better than cure. But I think what we're seeing as well is the complexity of the security requirements growing. So of those 150 tools, 60% of organizations, 40 of them are dedicated to security. We think there are, or estimating, even in today's economic climate, there are over 4 million open roles for cybersecurity. So there's a massive demand for people with cybersecurity credentials and capabilities. And in the regulatory and compliance space, there are typically about 150 changes to regulations every day made around the world. And they might be from minor changes to massive changes that we've seen in places like the European Union and other places around the world. So when it comes to security, yes, prevention is better than a cure, but there's a lot of complexity that's coming into it and a lot of shifting sands that we're seeing as well. So again, part of that is, yes, we can pour time and effort into prevention, but we should really be considering a backstop, a get out of jail free card, as it were. So with that sort of in mind, I wanted to share 2 really quick examples of Redstor customers, one over in the US, one over in Norway, who have had challenges really recently with Entra ID. So one of them, and I thought title this sort of, we're only as strong as our weakest point. They suffered a spear phishing attack. Now, we saw some of the data earlier that spear phishing attacks on the rise, but they have one of their sort of senior members in their team as an organization has global admin rights into Entra ID. They do security awareness testing, they do all the right stuff, right? So they've done the prevention side of it. Bit of a rush, bit of a bill they thought was coming from Microsoft, and they received a phishing email, a little bit similar to this, saying, hey, can you just update your password? We need you to have a look at your Microsoft invoice. In a bit of a rush, this global admin, who's very experienced, has some great credentials, great certifications, accidentally clicked on this link, added their credentials in, didn't think anything of it. Unknown to them, they had been spear phished. What caught them out was the speed and sophistication of the spear phish. So the malicious entity, instead of accessing Entra ID via the user interface, they actually had a whole load of preloaded scripts ready to go to attack Entra ID via the Graph API. And then from the Graph API, move sideways into the other Microsoft and non-Microsoft tools, so Teams, Planner, OneDrive, SharePoint, etc. They did this in literally minutes. The response from the customers, they didn't actually spot anything for about an hour. Their MDR clocked it, and in terms of actually starting to make some changes to their system to stop any movement, stop the stacker working, it took them sort of best part of an hour. In terms of the remediation, they did have a cost. It probably wasn't quite as high as some of the numbers you're seeing here, and these are obviously the average costs. There was for a variety of reasons why it wasn't quite this expensive. But the biggest challenge they had with remediation is they managed to boot the attacker out, change a load of passwords, lock the systems down. They'd noticed that in order to sort of cover their traces, and they think it's why it took sort of about an hour or so to respond, is the attacker had made loads of changes, loads of sort of unnecessary changes to Entra ID to almost sort of cover their tracks, reduce everybody's permissions. So they had Entra ID for them in this hour was a bit of a mess, as caused through the Graph APIs. What they ended up doing is ringing Microsoft and actually their partner who sells them their Microsoft service as well, ran Microsoft, said, look, we've had an attack. Please, can you reset our Entra ID to the base level? Because it's so messed up effectively, we can't unstitch it, unpick it. Microsoft, rightly or wrongly, said, no, we can't just reset it to a base level. There is no base level. So part of the cost of remediating this attack was purely spending a whole load of hours over the weekend, because naturally these things happen at Friday, 5 o'clock, fixing and trying to stitch their Entra ID back together. And it took them, they got most of it done over a weekend. It did cost them a fair amount of paying in overtime and individuals to help out. But also it took them a number of weeks then to fine tune it and make it a bit more perfect. They've got it sort of more or less up and running by sort of late Monday. So those are sort of things that are sort of quite frightening here. It's sort of spear phishing, standard attack, the speed and sophistication of the attack, the response, and then ultimately what the remediation ends up being. The other example I'll show you quickly, and then I'll let Adam do a demo because I can see he's itching to do it, is accidental changes with an Entra ID. We saw how complex and feature-rich Entra ID is. Tiny changes now in Entra ID can have some massive impacts to organizations. And there's a couple of changes and things that can happen in Entra ID that, although Microsoft have got some baked-in tools in Entra ID to protect against changes or roll out of them, not all of them are covered. So one of our customers based over in Norway decided to simplify some of their security groups with an Entra ID. The admin, who's got fair amount of experience in Entra ID, accidentally deleted some of their security groups. And it turns out that security groups are not recoverable from the recycle bin. So they couldn't just click through and undo that mistake, even though they spotted it immediately. They had to spend about a week scratching around trying to rebuild some of those security groups. Again, not catastrophic, didn't bring the whole business down, but did have an impact on a couple of different groups and organizations throughout the business that was quite hard to rectify. And obviously took that individual away from doing some of the other priority items they had planned that week as well. So changes are easy to make. Some of the tools we think are there are not always there. And that's, I think Adam will show you in a minute how we can help out. Good. All right. So those are sort of two examples and how we sort of see the threat landscape. I'll let Adam show us how we're doing it.
Awesome. Thanks ever so much, Dan. Okay, I think I'm sharing the correct screen. You should see what we call the Red App Management Console. So I thought I'd start right from the beginning, really. So I don't know how many of you have already seen Redstor with Turrito. So I thought I'd just show you right from the scratch. We're going to log into the Red App Console. And as Dan mentioned, we also use Microsoft Single Sign-On. Now, in this example, I'm actually going to use an email address and password to get the ball rolling. So I'm going to log into my demo area. And it's no less secure, this method. I'm going to go and then put in my 6-digit PIN that's on my phone. Oh, if I type the right number in, will be a good start. And I'm in my demo world. So this is me as an MSP. So this is the same as Turrito, and Turrito would then have their customers. And if you've not seen Redstor before, you'll have a dedicated area on the service And then what we can do is we can invite you in so that you log in to your own service. And once you're securely logged into the Redstor Red App console, over here, you'll see we've got Azure, we've got our Entra ID, which I'm going to talk about in a second. We've got our Google machines, Microsoft 365, and some other SaaS products. And of course, this dashboard dances around showing you exactly what you're using, what you're consuming. We've got suspicious files, and we've also can track your growth. Now, mine's a demo area, so it's a little bit static there. So, Entra ID, I'm going to go over into the Entra ID product. And you'll see here, I've actually got a South African tenant. And if I drill into my tenant, I'm just going to hit refresh there because it's been sitting there waiting. Once that refreshes, yeah, there we go. We've got our Azure score that's actually pulled in from Azure. So that shows you what you're doing right and wrong. Again, we're planning to focus on that a little bit more as we develop the Entra ID, but that's the score that's come from Entra ID. Now, mine is a demo environment, so we're not doing all the best practices, but we'll talk about that in a second. I can see a breakdown of the number of groups and users and roles and authentication units that I've got. And also down here, you'll see that I've got my users, my groups, my admin units, roles, and conditional access policies, just as Dan was talking about. So what we're going to do on this little demonstration is we're going to do an accidental deletion. So I'm going to go, in fact, actually, before I move off, let's just show that my guinea pig, Elon, is currently displayed as an active user within my Entra ID. So we're going to now go into Entra ID itself, go into my users area, and then I should be able to go and do a search for Elon. And there he is. He's a guest user, a company member of SpaceX, obviously, so we need to go and delete that user. Maybe he's flown the nest, he's gone off to do something else. So if I now refresh after deleting that user and go and search again for Elon, which is there, save me typing it in, he's gone. Okay, so obviously there is like a little bit of a recycle bin for users in Entra ID, but it only lasts for 30 days. So if you have a member of staff that has legitimately left an organization, 6 months later, the grass isn't as green on the other side of the fence and comes back, you can't just go and create a new user called Elon. He won't have all of the same access rights and roles and permissions as he would have done 6 months ago. So for this little demonstration, I'm going to go back to the Redstor console, and I now need to let Redstor know that Elon's been deleted. So I'm just going to simply hit the backup button there. And this only takes a few seconds for us to perform a backup. It's not like it's terabytes of data that you might be familiar with. So let me just refresh my screen. And then what I'm going to do is go into users, and I'm now going to search for Elon once more. And he should be showing as grey. There he is. So there's the backup that I performed this morning, just before 9. Now, if I want to restore Elon, all I simply need to do is identify the user. Now, what I can also do is identify the attributes of that user. So again, this is the very important stuff that you wouldn't be backing up or being able to recreate if you deleted that user normally. So I'm simply going to recover that user. And again, it's going to recover all of the membership, the owner, the role assignments, the manager. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to hit confirm. And what we should see is now I've got to jump through the hoops to make sure I have got the privileges to perform such a restore. So there is my Microsoft 365 Entra ID tenant. Probably going to have to accept the terms and conditions to perform that restore. And then that should redivert me back into the Red App console. Oh, got to do my 2FA as well. Again, there's no getting around that. Right, so 700232, nice easy one. Okay, so that's my restore taking place. What I'm going to do also while I'm waiting for that restore to take place, if I go back into users and remember the security score that, again, we pull in from Entra ID, I want to explain something quickly, is that when we first set this up, as I was a beta tester in November, got into a little bit of trouble, and I'll explain why. So if we go and view my user, obviously somewhere down here it will show when I last changed my password, which was last year in October. But one of the things I want to talk to you about is the comparison. So what I'm able to do is look at my last backup today, and I can scroll all the way down to a historical backup back in September last year, and I can do a comparison. Now, the relevance of this, I don't want to steal all of Dan's thunder, but where he was suggesting that an admin role or a conditional access policy might have changed and affected 1 or 20 or 100 users, it could take your staff days to try and figure out what has changed. Whereas with the comparison, I can see here that my original password, Naughty Adam, hadn't been changed since 2019. So that's why I quickly changed that to try and improve my security score. And of course, I can come back to here and I can choose to restore the latest version of my Entra ID or the 17th of September. So what we'll do now is I'll just click up on the little bubble up the top here, check that my restore for Elon has completed successfully. And I know we're almost running out of time, so I'm going to whiz over here. Let me just see if I can do a quick refresh. And there we go. Elon is back in my Entra ID, and I've saved the day. So apologies if you were hoping I was going to be in the command line. That is how simple it is, and that's testament to Dan and his team making it so simple. So I am going to stop sharing and pass back to Dan, I believe.
That's great. Thanks, Adam. And we've just hit 12:30, guys. So we are going to hand back to Dan to do a quick summary and close out. But I just brief comment from me on that demo. And just I've put some comments in the chat as well. Your account managers are going to be in touch with all of you. We're going to have POCs if you want them. But for me, just a quick note, having seen the demo yourself, and again, for me, we know an event is going to happen. When that event happens, from an IT team perspective, you're already going to be stressed. You're already launching into risk mitigation and resolution and so on and so forth. With the ease of a tool like this, if you're able to allocate one of your IT team to getting the user functional while the rest of you focus on the breach, that to me speaks volumes, and it lessens the impact, it lessens the severity, and importantly, it lessens the shit show, for lack of a better word, that you might find coming at you from your executive team or board members. Get the person operational again. That's got to be the most important thing, so we're not impacting on company time. Dan, over to you, and you can wrap things up for us.
Cool. Thanks very much, Adam. Great demo to see it in action. Thank you very much, Aaron. I can't take any credit. There's a lot of very clever engineers who work as my team. I just do PowerPoints and presentations. So quickly share, because I appreciate it's just gone 12:30. We appreciate everybody being on. Quick overview about our roadmap for Entra ID. So today we have, as you saw, users and groups, roles, and admin units backups. So you've been able to see that. You've just seen some of the view attributes that are in there as well. So you can see all the data that's included in each one of those object types. You'll be able to do that comparative restore as well. So if you think a change has happened, but you're not quite sure what it is, you can compare between the two, spot those changes, and then revert back and fix them really quickly if you need to. On the way in the future, you saw a little brief teaser there, was policies and conditional access policies are on the way. We've turned it on for a couple of different people, Adam included, and they'll be around the corner this month. We're releasing those. Multiple daily backups. So today we're taking one backup of your Entra ID a day. Going forward, you'll be able to take multiple backups of that, so from 3 and an even higher number of backups per day to make sure your Entra ID is really covered. We've got Intune device configuration, backup and recovery. So that will include things like being able to view the Intune app attributes for all those different Intune object types, do the comparative analyses and restores. And then later on in the year, we have things like enterprise apps and app registrations. Again, those are the SSOs and the apps that are governing users being able to log in and use Entra ID for different applications and things. We've also got some other bits and pieces along on the way. So bulk restores to be able to do sort of wholesale bulk restores of all the users, and that should be any next couple of weeks. The team working on that. It doesn't appear here. And then sort of longer term, we've got some other things along the way as well to really broaden that comprehensive coverage, things like audit logs, sign-in logs, BitLocker keys, and all the other different parts of Entra ID. So that's a brief overview about what we've got, and please do have a chat if there's some things in there that are really important and vital for you. We can open up some of the early access programs as well. Good. Finally, we've got a bit of a product overview as well, so you get sort of the nuts and bolts and deep dive exactly about our Entra ID product. Don't worry about trying to grab a screenshot of this now and find the QR app in your phone, but we'll send this around so you can have access to it as well. And then very finally, appreciate we're over, but if there's any questions, please fire them to us now, or feel free afterwards have a chat to the Turrito team. I'm sure I'm more than happy to help out.
Thanks, Dan. I think we will wrap it up there. And again, everyone, really appreciate your time. Just to reiterate, your account manager is going to be in touch with you. Keep an eye on your inbox. Melissa and her team, Jess, will be sending out a mail summarizing this with the recording and everything you need. And we'll be doing POCs with anyone who's interested. Very happy to have a conversation. As you know, with Turrito, any of your account managers, engineers, and us as directors of the business are always available. We're on our cell phones, happy to take any call. So give us a shout if you need to. Adam and Dan, thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for giving us some of your time.
You're welcome. No problem
Brilliant.
at all.
Thanks so much.
Sorry,
Well,
we
thanks for having us
overran a
on.
little bit.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day out there.
Thank you. You too. Go well.
Thanks, Matt.
Cool. Thank you very
Cheers.
much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Have a good
Go
rest
well.
of the day.
Bye now.
Cheers all.